Good morning, scholars. It is Tuesday, day 2 of grammar distance learning. All right. It is cool to be able to talk to you again, but I do really miss seeing you face to face. But we got one day under our belt, and we're going to keep learning, keep figuring it out. A couple things I want to go over from yesterday and what I got feedback from you guys as what didn't. I'm going to go back to some notes that are in your workbook. So we're going to do 3 things today. We're going to go over some of the notes from yesterday to clarify things. And then 2, we're going to briefly look at the homework from last night so you can actually see the answers for it. You can check your work. We'll discuss that a little bit. And then finally, I'm going to do day 2 of our notes. And in day 2 of our notes, there's actually like this chart, this little like table thing that I'm going to want you to pause the video, and you're going to actually copy that down in your notes. One of the things I got from students yesterday was that, Miss Doyle, could you please slow down? Like, absolutely, I can slow down in my explanation. However, you have this nifty thing called a pause button. So you can just go, boop, Miss Doyle, stop talking for a little bit while I finish writing my notes. And then when you're ready to continue to like the next bullet or whatever you've caught up on, press play again. Because I want to make sure I'm being efficient with our time as well. So I'm not just sitting here silently for 2 minutes while you finish that. And I also I want to make sure that I'm being efficient with my words so that I'm not overwhelming you with just a lot of this when we're not face to face to kind of understand things. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to move through a couple of screens. But the first thing that I want to look at is the homework from yesterday. So, I need to share my screen first, don't I? Excuse me. Share screen. We are going to go to the key first. All right, I believe we are there. Yes, we are. Okay, so this is the key. For tonight's homework and for the test, I'll actually attach that into Google Classroom, but here I just want to look at it because this one I had kind of confusing directions. So here, you're supposed to be identifying pronouns, meaning you're supposed to be finding like, oh, that's a pronoun. Ooh, that's a pronoun. But there's a second step where you need to say what word, what noun the pronoun is replacing, and we call that the antecedent. And so we're going to look at this really quick. So this is pronouns exercise 2, or exercise 1, excuse me. And here are the answers for numbers 1 through 5. Now you can see it's actually kind of like a conversation, a dialogue. And so that's one of the really great ways you can use pronouns, is you use them a lot in dialogue, because I say I, and then I talk to you and I say you, or I say he or she. And so dialogue is a really good way for us to do that. So in number 2, because number 1 they actually do for you, you actually only had to go to number 5. I, always a pronoun. You, always a pronoun. You, another one. And then it. All 4 of those, well, 3, one of them is twice, are always going to be pronouns, and they're going to be standing for something else. So here, I is actually standing for Jody because she's the one doing the talking. I know the reason you missed the target, but do you know what it is, Ted? Asked Jody. So Jody is our antecedent. That is what I is replacing. Then she doesn't have to say, Judy knows the reason, because she's Judy. And then here she is talking to Ted. So she is saying, you. You is standing for Ted. So sometimes the antecedent, even though it's supposed to come before, actually comes afterward. It's just the way it works. Grammar is not always perfect. And then here, it's the same you. She's just talking to Ted again. And then this is the tough one. This it is kind of funky. I know the reason you missed the target, but do you know what it is? You could replace that with, I know the reason you missed the target, but do you know what the reason is, Ted? And so that it is standing for reason. So I'm going to leave this up. You can like pause if you want to actually check your work. But that is how we're going to be utilizing those pronouns and antecedents. So if you want to look over that, pause right now, because I'm actually going to move on to something from our notes in our workbook that I wanted to highlight. Okay, remember, pause if you need to, and then play again when you're ready. Okay, now we are in our workbook, and these are some of the notes we have, and it's going to talk about what we're doing today. This page is the second page of your notes, and it's super, super important because it gives you a lot of information in a very short space. This, in our list of pronouns on the first page, there were some asterisks or stars. And those are the pronouns that also can act as adjectives sometimes. And you just have to be able to ask that which question. So I would put a big box around this whole thing. I apologize for my box making skills because it's going to be important. All right, so look at these two examples. We have Jack loaned me his book. Here, his is being used as an adjective. It's describing which book. But here, Jack said the book was his. His is a pronoun in the sentence standing for book. So you're gonna, it can get a little tricky. You can't just say, oh, this word, I know it, it's a pronoun. The best mistake you can make is kind of messing up between adjective or pronoun. You just gotta ask yourself, what is it doing? Is it describing or is it acting as a noun? Our exit ticket yesterday said, tell me the definition of a pronoun. And most of you got, it takes the place of one or more nouns. A couple of you did say something about it describes. It cannot describe because nouns can't describe. They get described by adjectives. So make sure you're paying attention to the exact definition, which is it's just a word that can take the place of a noun. Now, down here, back to that adjective conversation, many words you might think of as pronouns, my, your, our, that are listed on the previous page, they can only be adjectives. So if you want, you can go back to those notes and say, sorry, I'm going to see if this works. You can say, where's my? You can actually put a star by that. I'm going to waste too much time looking for this. You can actually put a star by it and make sure that you know that that is always an adjective. So, oh, that's why. Yeah, they're not listed with the personal pronouns on the first page. Miss Doe made a mistake. They're possessive pronouns, which means they'll never, ever be pronouns. You're always going to label them as adjectives. Sorry for the confusion there. Email me if I messed that up. This is the last bit we're going to talk about today, which are antecedents. And this anti or anti, it means before. And so usually it's supposed to mean it's what comes before the pronoun that the pronoun is replacing. Like Miss Doyle went to the store and she bought cookies. She is replacing a word that came before Miss Doyle. So the antecedent is a big fancy word that just means the noun the pronoun stands for, the noun the pronoun replaces. Jane said she was tired. The word Jane is the antecedent for she, and we say that it's just the word that the pronoun stands for, which leads us into our notes. I think we're doing okay on time. Remember, if I'm ever doing anything too fast, you can pause, you can rewind. It's the beauty of digital work, okay? Now, let's move into our day 2 note. Oh, I was on the wrong page. I'm going to put this as the whole screen. Okay. So our day 2 notes is this thing called pronoun antecedent agreement. And basically what it means is that whatever pronoun is replacing that proper noun, they need to match. They need to make sense with one another. Like you can't say Miss Doyle went to the store and they ate cookies. Like it doesn't make sense because I'm only one person. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. The first thing for pronouns and antecedents, sorry, Finn is staring at me. I think he wants to get up. Okay, hold on, Finn. And pronouns and antecedents, the antecedent is this, basically it's the pronoun, the noun of the pronoun, the noun the pronoun replaces. So like I said, Miss Doyle went to the store and she bought cookies. She is replacing Miss Doyle, so Miss Doyle is the antecedent. It's the proper noun that it's taking the place of. We have no special label for it. This is just an idea. You're not going to label it. You don't need to identify it necessarily. You just need to understand that it's there. This is going to make a lot more sense, and it's going to have a bigger impact later on when you're writing, because it is really important for an author, a writer, to make sure that they've given an antecedent. They've given the word that they're going to say she for later. Because if you just have a random she, you as the reader are like, who is this she? Who are you talking about? Because you didn't name that character to begin with. So antecedents are just to help your readers, follow the story. They can be more than one word because oftentimes they're proper nouns. So like Miss Doyle, more than one word, or Molly Maureen Doyle, my full name, would be, it's more than one word, but it's still that whole thing is the antecedent. And this is where Latin comes in, and this is one of my favorite lessons, so I'm really sad that we can't do this face-to-face. But the pronoun and the antecedent, they must agree in 3 ways: number, person, and gender. Remember, you can pause at any time if you need to. You will have recognized those from Latin, because I know you talk about number, I know you talk about person, and I know you talk about gender. Number, how many people are doing it? Person, is it first, second, or third? And gender, male, female, or no gender, neuter. We have an example here. Henry did not know what he wanted. He is our pronoun. What is our antecedent? What word is he standing for or replacing? It's Henry. Now, it's usually pretty easy in sentences like this. Sometimes it can get a little harder, it gets more complicated, but don't let the big word scare you. We already do this, we understand this. I'm just putting a name to it now. Now, for these, they are both third person, meaning there's no I, there's no you, it's just he. It's like a narrator talking. It's masculine, and it's singular. There's only one of them. Now, prepare yourselves. We're going to have a chart soon. Don't get overwhelmed, because you can pause and you can write it down. But this nifty chart, not nifty chart will help you to kind of maybe decide between adjectives and pronouns and just kind of have it as a reference. I know, it's huge. So I'm going to move my face out of here a little bit. And I wish I could write right now, but I can't. I hope you can see my mouse. But this whole chart, remember I said you could pause at any time, because this is going to be up here for a while. When we talk about subjective, that means it's in the subject case. It's doing the verb. This is what we call the nominative case in Latin. So like, the dog barked. Who's doing the barking? The dog. So then if you were to replace that with a pronoun, you'd say he barked or she barked. Actually, you'd say it, but they're the ones doing the verb. Objective is what we call the accusative case, and that is when they're receiving the action of the verb. We're going to talk about this job later, but like you say, I went to the store, or she gave the book to me. Me's not doing any giving there, they're receiving something. Now this column is what's important right here. Oh, I do have a little, well, I'll get better at that soon. This column, put a star here. Put a star here, because those are your adjectives. They come before a noun, like his book, her book, your pencil, our table. This possessive is showing ownership, but they're always pronoun. The book was mine. And then finally, these reflexive and intensive, they just refer back to our self, which is why we see the word self in all of them. Again, singular, first person, I, me, my. Second person, you. This is the same as like first, second, and third person perspective in fiction. And then third person is he, she, it, somebody who's outside of the story. And then plural, we know that if we just say I, if you add a person, then you go to we. If you have you, it just is you again, or he, she, or it. And then if it's plural, it becomes they. So this chart will just be helpful to you. Don't get overwhelmed, but make sure you write it down, because we're going to come back to it. And make sure you put a star above the possessive before a noun. Let's do a couple examples, and then your homework tonight will be exercise 2, numbers 1 through 5 again. Okay, and you're not going to have to do the identify the antecedent, except for a little bit. Okay, this is another big page. You don't need to write all of this down. This is more for your brain. Subjective versus objective pronouns. Nominative versus accusative case is another way you could think of that if you're thinking of Latin. When there are 2 pronouns, or a noun and a pronoun, you drop the other noun for a moment, and then you can see which case you want. Here's our example. Wrong. Don't do this one. Bob and me travel a good deal. Would you say me travel a good deal? I wish I could cover up this Bob. I think I can. I don't know how to. If you were to cover up this Bob and you just said me travel a good deal, that sounds strange. That sounds like something we would joke about in grammar class. So you need to actually say Bob and I travel, because I is doing the verb. You're doing the traveling. Okay? If you have questions on this, this is totally a really great thing to ask me about. But come back to this slide, because there's a lot of words, but it really explains it pretty well. Now, some special pronouns are singular when they are an antecedent. They must be replaced by a singular pronoun. Miss Doyle must be replaced by a singular pronoun because it's just me. If you said Miss Doyle and Mr. Bueller and Miss Jensen, then we could have plural because there are 3 of us. Hold on. Okay, my dog Finn, sorry. I hope he doesn't come in the camera. So like anybody, anyone, each, everybody, all of those are singular, and therefore you have to use a singular pronoun with it or a singular adjective. So wrong, anybody can ask for their money back. There is technically plural. It's something we say all the time in our speech. This is more for written grammar. Anybody can ask, anybody can ask for his or her money back. Now, like I said, this is definitely more for written grammar because we say there all the time to refer to singular people, but in writing, you're actually supposed to say anybody can ask for his or her money back. And so sometimes authors just make a choice and choose his. Sometimes authors choose and say her, and sometimes authors switch back and forth. But either way, that's sometimes why you'll see in like a textbook, they'll switch from he to she, just talking about an example of a person. It's because you have to use a singular pronoun with singular antecedents. Okay, so I want you to look at this subjective versus objective pronoun, choose the correct pronoun. So I want you to pause, try to choose the correct pronoun. In about 5 seconds, I'm going to give you the answers, but I want you to pause and try it. Okay. All right. Okay. My roommate and I enjoy eating because they're doing the eating, or they're doing the enjoying. Each dog has its own leash because dogs aren't a person, so even though we say he or she, you're technically supposed to use it or it. He and Paul are best friends, not him, because he and Paul are doing the being. They're doing the action of the verb. We may disagree because we are doing the disagreeing, because you would not say us may disagree at times. That sounds weird. But there are never hard feelings between me and her. And that's something because we call it the object of the preposition, which we will learn next unit. Last but certainly not least, because anyone is singular, we know that it has to be, oh, but girls, sorry, I messed that up too. Miss Doyle messes stuff up all the time. The girls are doing the inviting, they are plural, so it's their party. I think I got away with only 2 major mistakes today. I think that's pretty good. So, your homework tonight is to do exercise 2, and it is to numbers 1 through 5, and we'll look at that right now. Like I said, I want you to box this part of your notes. It's going to be really important because every time for the rest of the book, it's going to randomly tell you, hey, what's the definition of an antecedent? And you're going to have to tell me that it's the noun the pronoun stands for. So don't forget this part because it's going to ask you for it. I'm going to ask you in your homework multiple times and on tests, what's the definition of an antecedent? Just like what's the definition of a pronoun, okay? So pronouns exercise 2 looks like this. Now, you don't actually have to say like what they're standing for. And there's one hint I'm going to give you. In this assignment, paper is not usually a noun. It is telling us which towels, paper towels. So anyone answer what that would be? It's modifying a noun. Yep, it's an adjective. So I want you to do numbers 1 through 5. You can always do the whole exercise. If you want extra practice, it's just not necessary, but you can always do the whole exercise if you would like, if you are feeling like, I need a little bit more. Okay, so that was a lot of information, and I hope it kind of made sense. And if you have questions, make sure you connect with me. It's been really cool to see your interactions online. And yeah, so thank you so much for listening, and have a good rest of your Tuesday. Okay, bye-bye.